of New England's high tide. That being said, it's still going to be extremely windy. The Cape still acts like a cup, and it still holds in and sees all of that increasing wind and the increasing water. It starts pooling in that location. As we get into Saturday, 10 a.m., still some very strong wind gusts all across southeastern Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine. Yarmouth in Nova Scotia certainly getting hit with some strong winds as well. And the wind doesn't start to really diminish until after that landfall, which is not going to happen until, we're thinking, Saturday afternoon, early evening, but the wind not fully diminishing as we get, for some of you, not even all the way until Sunday. So I think the most widely felt impact from Lee, as in impacting the most amount of people, is going to be the wind and therefore the power outages. Right now, when you're in an awful situation with how much rain you've had recently, when you have dry soil, it's hard as a rock, right? That packs down the roots and it makes it harder for trees to knock over. But you don't have that. The soil is incredibly wet, it's incredibly loose, which allows the trees to topple over more easily. On top of that, when you have leaves on the tree, that increases the surface area for the wind to push on the tree, meaning there's more force on the tree there. So those two, I think, are going to be the primary driver behind power outages. Yes, there are some very strong wind gusts, 50, 60 miles per hour on the Cape, but even elsewhere in eastern Massachusetts, eastern New Hampshire, across the entirety of Maine, where your winds may not be that intense, you're still pretty susceptible to this. It's going to be similar to a nor'easter, but just at a worse time of the year. Nor'easters typically happen later in the fall and in the winter when you don't have as many leaves on the trees. We do have some coastal flood advisories for Long Island, southern Connecticut. This we're watching for. The highest threat is going to be overnight Friday into Saturday morning during that high tide period. An advisory means it's not expecting to be particularly bad. It just may be a bit of minor coastal flooding. There are going to be some nasty waves though, so beach erosion and a little bit of shoreline flooding is expected. It's a bit different for the Cape. Again, it acts like that cup, so that really strong wind is going to be pushing all that water up along the Cape. There is a coastal flood warning, which is a step above a coastal flood advisory. The strongest of the winds likely going to be coming in just before high tide, so I think that is going to lessen the threat for some coastal flooding, not get rid of it. I think some minor coastal flooding is a possibility. I think the worst of that will be during your high tide during midday on Saturday. But there are still going to be some nasty, large breaking waves, up to 16 feet a possibility here. And because of the waves, we are expecting some, unfortunately, beach erosion and also some minor coastal flooding. Again, the worst of that expected Saturday midday. And it's a very similar problem in Maine. Their coast is a little bit different than the Cape, so I think they're a little bit better fortified against some waves like this, but there's still going to be some overwash due to large breaking waves. The highest threat is going to be during the Saturday midday high tide for you. So that is the coastal flood impact, beach erosion impact. Let's talk more about the storm surge. Storm surge is going to be the worst if it occurs during high tide. Thankfully, though, as I mentioned, for areas like Dennis, Massachusetts, strongest winds closer to mid-morning, whereas the high tide for you is closer to 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday. So I think that is going to limit the coastal flooding impact there. Not get rid of it, just limit it. It's going to be some minor coastal flooding, still some nasty waves on top of that. But you're still going to be seeing 50, 60 mile per hour winds at that time. As we get into Saturday night, the wind dies down to just being a bit breezy. Bar Harbor, a very similar situation. Your high tide Saturday afternoon is going to be around 12:21. Your strongest of winds expected by the mid-morning of Saturday. So again, just a risk for some minor coastal flooding, but it really depends on where you are because some areas of the coast in Maine are basically cliffs. So I really think you are significantly better fortified against this than some spots of maybe the Cape are. So I really don't think storm surge is going to be the biggest issue coming from this storm. I think it's going to be the wind and the power outages and the waves, as you can see, and also creating that beach erosion. Similar to your typical nor'easter during a more impactful time of year and also a particularly strong nor'easter. Now, at the worst of it, the storm surge is not expected to be that significant. In fact, the National Hurricane Center has pulled back a little bit on the forecast for the Cape. Still up to 3 feet in Maine. That's not really a big issue for you guys. In the Cape and closer to Rhode Island and Connecticut, up to 2 to 3 feet. But that's what we call the reasonable worst case scenario. That's only going to be a risk as we head into the Saturday afternoon high tide. And again, the strongest of the winds is going to be a little bit before that, which is why this is truly a reasonable worst case scenario. And we're not exactly expecting that. And a lot of you, even on the Cape, are better fortified against storm surge than areas like Florida, for example. So let's talk about the rain. Most of you dry throughout the day on Friday. It's going to be late Friday night, overnight Friday night into Saturday that you're really going to get those heavy rain bands along the Cape, eastern Massachusetts, eastern New Hampshire, and all across Maine. It is going to be raining most of Saturday for you. In fact, you really don't start drying out for some areas of Maine. That doesn't happen until we get to late Saturday night into early Sunday morning. Rainfall totals highest in eastern Maine. Don't want to rule out some isolated flash flooding, but as of right now, that is going to be primarily focused across areas of Maine. Thankfully, Massachusetts, for now, is outside of this flash flood threat for Saturday into Sunday morning. All right, not everyone's being impacted by the storm, so I want to cover all of you. Friday's looking like a stormy day across the southeast, Florida included, Alabama, Georgia, you're included in that, Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico. I'll be talking about this in more detail in just a couple of minutes. But that's also true for some portions of Iowa into Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, western UP and Michigan, drier in spots like Milwaukee, Indianapolis, and Cleveland. Northern Plains, most of you dry. Temperatures overall in the 70s there. And then watch as we get to the desert southwest, Four Corners region, you do have a couple chances. Fox Weather's the Hurricane HQ. We are all tracking Lee. We have our multimedia journalists. We have our meteorologists anywhere from Massachusetts into Portland, Maine, into Bar Harbor, Maine, Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. We've got another update coming for you in a couple minutes.
Once they're through and they're behind them, the Russians, you know, it's like any other fixed fortifications thing. Once your fixed fortification has been breached, you no longer have a fixed fortification. All you have is you're stuck in a place where you can't defend.
Yeah, Hal, I'm also curious too. I mean, where's the focus amongst Ukrainian forces, you know, not on the front lines of the counteroffensive? We've seen some activity. You know, we know they're targeting targets inside of Russia, the hinterlands there, but also a focus on Crimea and Black Sea ports, right?
There's a very interesting, a variety of things. Number one, and this is, of course, this is the dominant news today, was a very successful missile strike. It looks like cruise missile strikes. Could have been the French Scalp or maybe the British version of that, which actually the French one is the British version of that. But it could have been cruise missiles that hit Sevastopol, which is that big Russian naval base, and they took out a submarine, which was kind of interesting. They also took out a landing craft, a ship, but they took out a submarine. Both of them were sitting in dry dock. So as counter submarine or anti-submarine warfare goes, it's a rather unusual strike that you take a submarine that is literally out of the water like that in dry dock. But as important as taking out those ships are, the submarine and the other ship, they also took out other facilities to include damaging the dry docks. And the reports on that are the dry docks are in serious jeopardy, that they don't know if they're going to be able to be repaired anytime soon. They think that the ships, the submarine and the other ship that was in them, are in serious jeopardy as well. And they're not going to be able to get back in commission. So that may have shut down Sevastopol as a place for maintenance. At the same time, there was a very successful strike on an S-400, the most advanced anti-aircraft system. Brilliant strike from all reports. Using drones, they went in, took out the radar, took out some other associated equipment, and then when they were blind, they literally came in and took out the missiles themselves.
Wow.
And there's reports of 15 loud explosions. And one can only guess what that number alludes to, but it tells me the number of missiles were taken out. All right, that
wow.
entire battery. And that leaves that entire sector open. So now the Russians are going to have to scramble to move stuff from somewhere else to cover that sector, which may leave something else uncovered. And keep in mind, all of this is being closely scrutinized by the Ukrainians to see what are you going to move and what new opportunities will await. And then the one that we've talked about before is this amphibious raid thing with the Royal Marines. The British Royal Marines have been training Ukrainian Marines in this special 5-week course on how to do amphibious raids. It covers a lot of basics, but also covers some more advanced things. And the Ukrainians have gone in there right now along the western coast, and they've been doing these raids. If you go a little bit further into the Dnipro River, further west, they've also been conducting what we call riverine operations. You could call them amphibious operations on some of the Dnipro islands and keeping the Russians off guard, and in some cases actually seizing terrain and holding terrain from what we got. So there's all these, along with the main, what I call high intensity warfare battle that's taking place, up near Bakhmut and down to Zaporizhia. You have all these other unusual operations, which are making it very difficult for the Russians to operate in Crimea and frankly, anywhere in the West. And then if the Ukrainians get down to the Sea of Azov, that opens up the opportunity for some of those counter ship operations with drones. But also, if they, with this new capability they have with amphibious raids, opening up the eastern side of Crimea to amphibious raids. Yeah. So a lot going on there.
Yeah, I mean that's the ultimate goal. I mean that's the jackpot is getting to the Sea of Azov, cutting off the land bridge to Crimea there. All right, let's talk about Volodymyr Zelensky, Hal. We got some news today, and I think that was so interesting, so telling about the next couple of weeks. This from Punchbowl's Jake Sherman. He says Zelensky is expected to visit Capitol Hill next week during a trip to the United States. This comes as Congress wrestles with $24 billion in aid for Ukraine. Hal, Live Now look there. Nope, that was Washington. In New York City, because he's going to also be at the UN General Assembly next week. And so we know that he's going to speak, I believe, I saw some reporting suggest, with President Biden on the sidelines there. So Zelensky coming to America, and of course, the funding fight is going to be front and center. I mean, this, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is going to be a trip to make the play for more funding. Isn't that right?
He's going to go to the General Assembly, which I have to tell you, this is one of the most amazing General Assemblies ever. 151 foreign leaders, national leaders, are going to be in New York. You can imagine the security, I'm not going to say nightmare, but headaches, if you will, challenges that they're dealing with. This is one of the most well-attended General Assemblies. Surprisingly, Putin will not be there. Go figure that. Xi is not going to be there. There is a possibility that Raisi, the head of Iran, the president of Iran, could be there. And he's had an invitation by the Council for Foreign Relations to actually show up at an event there. He could show up. That's causing all sorts of issues on Capitol Hill right there. Right. The leader of Iran showing up on U.S. soil. But that's the deal we made. When we signed up to be, where the UN headquarters was located, we had an agreement that we would letting national leaders from all over the world, regardless of how we feel about them, and we have to stick to that. That's a treaty that we signed. But he's going to do that. So he's going to do that. President Biden is also going to be in New York. I imagine there'll be some meetings up there, some photo opportunities. Obviously, President Zelensky's going to have a chance to meet with a number of foreign leaders there. Then he comes down to Washington, D.C. He's going to meet President Biden at the White House. That will be a very public meeting. And then he's going to make it really tough for some members of Congress to say no on the funding, because he's going to literally walk up to their doors and the cameras are going to be with them. And it's going to, after all that momentum coming to Capitol Hill, I have to tell you, I know he's the a foreign leader, but he's playing U.S. politics about as well as I've ever seen it played. You know, that's
I've so noticed that too. I mean, he is in tune with U.S. politics. You know, just as much, if not more so, than, you know, some of the people whose job it is to talk about politics on TV each and every day, and some of the people who are politicians themselves. And we saw this last time, the first time he came to the United States since the war began. He gave a joint address to Congress there. And the whole tenor and theme of his visit was gratitude, was thanks, but also with a request for more. And I believe, and I'm just having followed this so closely, I think that's going to be the tenor, and it's going to be even more urgent this time around as the counteroffensive is ongoing. We're going into the winter months. We know the winter fighting season is much harder than it is right now, and he's going to bring probably results to show some of these, especially Republican members, Hal, who are holdouts, who do not want to fund the Ukrainian war effort anymore.
I think he's going to have numbers on his side.
Yeah.
With the numbers, you know, the amount of territory they've taken, everything else. But when you look at I would expect if they were holding off to do something spectacular, let's say there is an area they think there isn't, say in the Zaporizhia in the southern battlefield, that they can push forward. I would expect you might see something. In fact, I'm sure the Russians have calculated that they're going to see something in the next 72 to 96 hours. You know, and all of this is to basically set the stage, if you will. And it wouldn't be the first time that's happened in warfare, that you see things timed around other political events around the world to do that. I also expect that President Biden may announce while he's there, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I am saying it makes sense with all the feelers the White House has put out on this, that he might announce they're going to send ATAC of missiles, those longer range missiles, 195-mile range missiles, to formally say we are sending them to Ukraine. They're going to use them in Crimea. So that would be something I'd expect to come out of that as well. But it's you hit the nail on the head. I mean, he reads U.S. politics, and frankly, there's a lot of aid going into Ukraine, but the U.S. is the biggest provider of aid. You know, we got F-16s going in. We've got those Abrams tanks. We've got we are the if you will, the armory, if you will, of freedom in that regard. And we've always have been in these things where we really become the armorer, the ammunition supplier, whatever you want to say. We keep a lot of these wars, these countries afloat.
Right.
And during the Cold War, we did this all the time.
Right.
We'd help keep countries afloat that were facing communism. So,
all right, Hal. Well, Zelensky coming to America next week. All eyes will be on New York City there for the UN General Assembly, the annual kind of confab of world leaders. So many of them will be descending on the Big Apple, and it's always interesting to see who's talking to who's not talking to who. We're told, I was told by some sources today that Bibi Netanyahu and Biden might have a little meeting there in New York as well. So we got to look out for all these things. We got to look out for all these things. Hal Kempfer, as always, thanks so much.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right. In the meantime, let's just show a little bit there of the State Department briefing, talking about so much of what Hal and I were just discussing. As we approach the top of the next hour, at the top of the hour, though, we're going back out to Detroit. Our reporter, Dave Kinchin, he's standing by with an update on this strike now that everyone's talking about as we get ever closer. The clock is ticking, midnight almost upon us. Out to the State Department.
In Russia's future energy production and export capacity, including Russia's flagship Arctic LNG 2 project. The department also designated numerous entities producing and repairing Russian weapon systems, including the Kalibr cruise missile used by Russian forces against cities and civilian infrastructure in Ukraine, and an individual affiliated with the Wagner Group who was involved in the shipment of munitions from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea to the Russian Federation. Concurrently, the Department of Treasury imposed nearly 100 sanctions on a wide range of targets, including Russian oligarchs, officials, entities that support Russia's war machine, and 2 additional banks. In addition to taking these sanctions against Russia today, we are also taking important steps to support Ukraine's recovery efforts. We are pleased to extend a warm welcome to Penny Pritzker, former Secretary of Commerce, who was named by President Biden as the special representative for Ukraine's economic recovery. As Secretary Blinken said when he visited Kyiv last week, we are committed to ensuring that Ukraine not only survives, but thrives, and Secretary Pritzker will work to ensure that is the case. We welcome Special Representative Pritzker to her new role and look forward to working with her. And finally, shifting to Moscow, I want to speak to the fact that today the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs informed Ambassador Lynn Tracy of the decision to declare 2 U.S. diplomats persona non grata. This unprovoked expulsion of our diplomatic personnel is wholly without merit, as is the case against a former Russian contractor of our embassy who was arrested for the supposedly nefarious task of performing such activities as providing our embassy with media clips. Yet again, Russia has chosen confrontation and escalation over constructive diplomatic engagement. It continues to harass employees of our embassy, just as it continues to intimidate its own citizens. We regret that Russia has taken this path, and you can certainly expect that we will respond appropriately to their actions. And with that, Matt.
Okay. When can we expect to see a response?
I don't want to preview
Today?
that. I don't want to preview that, but we have acted expeditiously in the past in response to such actions by the Russian Federation.
Okay, and then just going, well, I presume that you don't have anything more to say about this. I mean,
No.
these two were, as far as the U.S. is concerned, were just doing their jobs and not doing anything nefarious.
They were just doing their jobs, as was the underlying employee who the Russian government arrested some months ago was doing, completely legal tasks that are in compliance with Russian law.
Have they left yet, or no?
No, they have not. Anything else on this? Go ahead.
Have you already summoned Russian ambassador?
I don't want to speak to exactly the steps that we are taking to respond, but you can certainly expect that we will do so. I'm not going to say when we're going to take those steps. We will make those clear to the Russian government, and we will make them clear to you at the appropriate time.
I just want to go quickly to the sanctions you guys have announced today. There are 5 entities that are based in Turkey, and I'm just wondering if you guys, they are entities in Turkish private sector, none of them are government entities, but I'm just wondering if you have given the Turkish government a heads up ahead of time.
We often take those steps. I am not aware whether we did in this instance or not. I'm happy to follow up.
Right. Have you received any feedback from the Turkish government since the sanctions announcement is out?
Not that I'm aware of.
Right. Is the United States...
Okay, so at this time, each and every night, if you are a watcher of Live Now from Fox, a viewer, we get into the major international headlines. We wanted to show you a little bit of the State Department briefing from earlier today. Of course, we always speak to Hal Kempfer, providing such great insight into these major international stories, like the war in Ukraine, like the upcoming UN General Assembly that's going to happen next week in New York. Like, now we know that Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian leader, will be coming to the United States for UNGA there in New York, and also he'll be going to Washington. He'll be meeting with leaders on Capitol Hill. He'll be speaking with President Biden. So it's shaping up to be quite a big week in international politics come next week. But in the meantime, we're approaching the top of the hour. Let's get really to the biggest story of the night now, shaping up to be the biggest story of the week, the UAW strike. We just heard last hour from UAW President Shawn Fain, and 3 of these regional local chapters of the UAW have been called to strike starting at midnight. Let's go to Detroit right now. We're going to get an update from Fox 2's Dave Kinchin. He's standing by. Dave, good to see you. So it is official now. We just heard from Fain, and we got, about an hour left before this is even more official. What more do we know?
Yeah, that's right. Good to see you as well. We're here outside of Solidarity House, the UAW headquarters. We know Missouri, Ohio, and right here in Michigan, though, there will be 3 plants that will have some form of a strike that will begin at midnight. The stand-up strike is what UAW President Shawn Fain is calling it. It's a phased-in approach. His words to keep to keep the big 3 guessing. We got some numbers for you. There's a lot of data on this whiteboard here, but we know there's 57,000 UAW members who work for Ford. There's 46,000 who work for GM. There's 42,000 who work for Stellantis. That's the company that essentially owns the Chrysler brand, including the Chrysler-Fiat merger from some years back. The UAW has wanted originally about 46% increase in wages. They've come down to about 35%. The highest we've seen tonight offer a brand new offer from General Motors at 20%. And that includes 10% in the first year. That's up from 18% where they were, and Ford's at 20% what they're offering, and the last known number from Stellantis, 17.5% is what they're offering. That's their counter proposal to the UAW so far. But the question is that good enough? It doesn't seem like it, because the UAW is really trying to get that number a lot closer. So we talked to some analysts and labor relations attorneys not connected to this case, not working on it, but following it, to get their thoughts on the benefits and the risks of this type of strike. And here we go. The 11th hour is essentially here, and the UAW's stand-up strike plans against the Big Three are set to change the game, according to labor experts. And in some ways, it already has.
They've kept everyone guessing. I think it is a game changer in terms of how these negotiations have played out. In some sense, we saw maybe a bit of a delay in some of the economic offers back and forth. I'm not sure if that's because some of the Big Three were waiting to see what other ones would do, who would blink first, or if it was just a response to this new strategy.
Brett Miller is a labor relations attorney in downtown Detroit. He says the UAW's historic strategy of ramping up the strike action in a phased-in way is gutsy and carries its fair share of risk, especially as the Big Three continues the expensive transition into the EV world.
If you are sitting in the boardroom at one of the Big Three, you're weighing the costs of what the union is asking for versus the potential business loss. Again, looking at a $3.6 billion loss GM faced just a few years ago in 2019 from a strike. These are some very serious calculations that you have to consider when weighing what's a fair deal.
Auto analysts say it could work, and the Big Three might be cornered with no choice but to get closer to the union's demands of acceptable double-digit pay percentage increases, the wiping out of tiers, and proper inflation adjustments. Or it could backfire, especially if the strike goes too long.
If it goes on for too long, both parties suffer losses which it is difficult to recoup. And they're vulnerable in the sense that the pressures for electrification and the competition in the industry are keen and threatening to the company. And also the union, it represents a decreasing share of the industry, which is more non-union. And obviously that may cause some companies to rethink their strategy about where they want to assign work.
Wayne State business professor Merrick Masters says the Big Three are likely planning to try and turn the tables.
Look like that in effect they lock out the employees at some sites, and that they shut down facilities so that they put pressure on the union and say, you're going to have all your workers out on strike and you're going to have to pay the strike benefits. The more of them that are out on strike, the more pressure you're going to feel the longer they're out for you to concede something.
Now, here's what we can tell you about all of this. We're still waiting to see how the Big Three will respond to this phased-in, targeted approach to the strike. We do know that the UAW is targeting with these plants that they just announced, again, if the strike does happen at midnight, we do know that these plants produce some of the most popular vehicles for the Big Three. So the Big Three feeling the pinch likely even more once this all officially starts, if it officially starts. The contracts run out at 11:59 p.m. Sean Fain also said a couple quick points, that workers will be working without a contract but are to stay on the job until he, through local leadership, calls them to join the strike as they ramp up the effort. He says while these workers are working without a contract, they cannot be fired. The strike fund will support them, although that will likely be taxed heavily as more and more people strike, if that's what happens. And another point, how do we get to this whole situation to begin with? It was back in March when the UAW elected new leadership. Sean Fain won by 500 votes. I sat down with him as soon as he addressed the General Assembly of the UAW, and he said flat out, we are going in a bold new direction. They changed the way they're doing collective bargaining. They got rid of a lot of the lobbyists, the lawyers who worked on these collective bargaining cases in the past. Instead of calling it the president's demands that goes to the big three, he calls it the members' demands that were sent over to the big three. And all of this has happened in unprecedented form with negotiation essentially taking place in the public. Fain on Facebook Live and the big three responding back and forth instead of a lot of this going on behind closed doors like it used to in the past. So a lot of things have changed, and this is the first time ever, if this happens, that all big three companies will be striked against by the UAW. So we've never seen anything like that before.
Yeah.
We're live at Solidarity House, the headquarters of the UAW in Detroit. Back to you.
Yeah, you know, Dave, I mean, your point is so valid and true. This has been unfolding in front of all of us. It's been so public. They've been very, very transparent about that. So for us as journalists, that's a plus. Can you put up your whiteboard yet again? Because I was noticing some differences, from when we spoke just last night. So it seems to me the UAW leadership, they've gone down a little bit from 40 to 36%. And you're seeing Ford still at 20, GM now up to 20, but Stellantis, they're not budging at that 17.5%, are they?
Right. Yeah, that's right. Well, they did put out another counter offer, but they would not reveal publicly what the details in that contract are, in that contract offer, what they contain. So this is the last known number from Stellantis, 17.5%. It might have changed a little bit, but they haven't said publicly. And if you look at, there's one calculation that said originally the UAW was at 46%, but a basic calculation was indeed 40%, but now they're down to the mid-30s right now. GM and Ford at 20. The gap's closed, but not enough. And again, tiers are still in place according to the last counteroffers we saw from the big three, and that's a huge point of contention for the UAW. They want those tiers absolutely gone.
Yeah, it is just so fluid at the moment with little under an hour left to go before this all kicks into high gear. Dave, just lastly, what are we hearing from elected leaders there in Michigan especially? Are they weighing in yet?
You know, we haven't heard just yet. It's interesting. Governor Whitmer here in Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, her office tweeted out a video of her, kind of a fun video of her at the Detroit Auto Show, which is set to start really this week. And the media, the national media, they're in town looking at cars, and she was kind of in and out of a lot of the latest vehicles at the auto show, promoting vehicles made by union workers here in the USA in Detroit. But the feeling is totally different now. Usually it's very glitzy and glamorous. The charity preview is this weekend, where people, we call it auto prom, where people get dressed up, tuxes, dresses, and they check out the cars. But the mood is very different, you know, and even in the media, a lot of folks in the media, they've changed the way they're looking at presenting the coverage of the auto show because the backdrop is going to be quite serious. There's a big rally with Bernie Sanders just up the street, scheduled I believe tomorrow, scheduled just up the street from where the auto show will be taking place. So it's going to be a very interesting kind of tale of two stories here, all related to the autos here in Detroit.
Yeah, coincidental, ironic. I just don't even know how these two things lined up so perfectly, but it is peculiar. It is strange. Of course, Bernie Sanders, a champion of labor there, but I'm from the Michigan area. I know how important the North American International Auto Show is each and every year, and now with the backdrop of this strike. Dave Kinchin, as always, thanks so much. Talk soon.
Yes, sir. Take care.
All right. In the meantime, you know, you just heard Dave kind of name check that tweet from Governor Gretchen Whitmer there in one of these new vehicles on the showroom floor there at the TCF Center in Detroit. Take a look at this video. This is what she was posting. She says, everyone's rolling like a big shot when they're riding in a union-made Michigan whip. So quite strategic there with the nod in the wording union made there as Whitmer posting that video there on her Twitter account earlier today. So we'll wait and see. We're probably going to get some reactions in, some statements in from a lot of these Michigan lawmakers. No doubt, of course, Senator Bernie Sanders, a champion of labor there, the independent from Vermont, who is always down on the picket line with some of these striking workers. Looks like he's going to do just that there in Detroit tomorrow, like Dave just said there. I want to put up some of these other just bullet points here that we want to make sure, because this is somewhat complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. It's very fluid. So what we know, UAW President Shawn Fain announces a historic, quote, stand-up strike, that's what they're calling it, on September 15th tonight at midnight Eastern if no deal is reached, striking against the big three auto manufacturers, Ford, GM, and Stellantis. So UAW is asking for a 35% wage increase, a 32-hour work week, and more for members. So as of our last update from Dave Kinchin, it looks like they are at 36%. That was up to 46%. It's now down to 36%. So this is what we know. If the deal with the big three is not reached, these three chapters of the UAW will participate in the stand-up strike. So UAW Local 2250 in Wentzville, Missouri, that's a GM plant. UAW Local 12 in Toledo, that's a Stellantis plant. And UAW Local 900, that's in Wayne, Michigan, that's a Ford plant as well. We know Fain will be out there at the Michigan location there at the Ford plant, striking with those workers once the clock hits midnight. Well, speaking of Fain, we do want to let you listen in to his brief statement that he made at the top of the last hour in case you didn't catch it live. Here's what he had to say.
Good evening, UAW family. I'm going to be brief because time's of the essence. For the past 24 hours, we've been actively bargaining with Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. For the first time in our union's history, we had all three companies bargaining right here at the Solidarity House, leading into the final hours of our strike deadline. We've been working hard trying to reach a deal for economic and social justice for our members. We have been firm. We are committed to winning an agreement with the big three that reflects the incredible sacrifice and contributions UAW members have made to these companies. We've been open. The companies, the members, and the public know that what we've been fighting for. And we've been clear. Midnight on the evening of September 14th is a deadline. UAW family, that deadline is nearly here. Tonight, for the first time in our history, we will strike all three of the big three at once. We are using a new strategy, the stand-up strike. We will call on select facilities, locals, or units to stand up and go on strike. Tonight, we call on 3 units to stand up and go on strike at midnight if we do not reach a tentative agreement in the next 2 hours. We're calling on GM, Wentzville Assembly, Local 2250 in Region 4 to stand up and strike. We're calling on Stellantis, Toledo Assembly Complex, Local 12 in Region 2B to stand up and strike. And we're calling on Ford, Michigan Assembly Plant, Final Assembly and Paint only, Local 900 in Region 1A to stand up and strike. These 3 units are being called to stand up and walk out on strike at midnight tonight. The locals that are not yet called to join the stand-up strike will continue working under an expired agreement. No contract extensions. Though the contract is expired, most of your contract is still in effect. Management cannot change terms and conditions of work in your workplace. You do not become an employee at will. You cannot be fired or disciplined for no reason. This strategy will keep the companies guessing. It will give our national negotiators maximum leverage and flexibility in bargaining. And if we need to go all out, we will. Everything is on the table. I encourage you to visit uaw.org/standup for everything you need to know about working under an expired contract. No matter what, all of us need to keep organizing. Rallies, protests, red shirt days, and community events. We must show the companies you are ready to join the stand-up strike at a moment's notice. And we must show the world that our fight is a righteous fight. Again, tonight at midnight, GM Wentzville Assembly, Local 2250 in Region 4, Stellantis Toledo Assembly Complex, Local 12 in Region 2B, and Ford Michigan Assembly Plant, Final Assembly and Paint Only, Local 900 in Region 1A, will stand up and walk out on strike. The rest of us will keep organizing and support them on the picket line. If we strike tonight, I'll see you on the picket line at Michigan Assembly at midnight. Tomorrow, we'll be holding a mass rally at the UAW Ford Joint Trust Building in downtown Detroit at 4 p.m. We will show our strength and unity on the first day of this historic action. All options remain on the table. National leadership will determine the appropriate targets and timing for further stand-up strike action. This is our generation's defining moment. The money is there, the cause is righteous, the world is watching, and the UAW is ready to stand up. This is our defining moment. Thank you.
All right. There you go, Shawn Fain, with those very brief remarks, because he said time is of the essence. Of course, they have about 45 minutes left before these stand-up strikes begin in full there in these three locations. So in the meantime, let's just kind of go over the nuts and bolts yet again of the case itself. You see there, those are the three units, those three chapters that are striking in just about 45 minutes' time, walking off the job. They're at UAW Local 2250 in Wentzville, Missouri. That's a GM plant. Also at UAW Local 12 in Toledo, Ohio, a Stellantis plant. And at UAW Local 900, they're a Ford plant in Wayne, Michigan. And that's where Shawn Fain is going to be leading the charge there as these three UAW local chapters will be walking off the job. Now, remember, UAW members are asking for a 35% wage increase, also a 32-hour work week, and more benefits for members, also cost-adjusted benefits for inflation for members, how to deal with the rise in the manufacture of EV vehicles as well, and so much more. So we've got to keep an eye on this going into the overnight hours and the early morning hours to see who is responding to this, whether or not we're going to hear from the White House, from the governor's mansion there in Lansing. Remember, it's not just focused on Michigan. Obviously, Detroit is the auto capital of the world, Motor City, but these plants are in Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Kentucky, Texas, and other states as well. So it's going to be impacting all of these economies going forward. We don't have a good sense or a timeline of how long a strike could last. Now, remember, this all happened back in 2019, but it was with only GM workers, members of the UAW who work at GM plants, and that lasted for about 40 days. So the UAW just tweeted this out. Take a look at this. They say, stand up. Stand up for our families. Stand up for our communities. Stand up to corporate greed. Stand up for economic justice. Stand up. And like I said, Fox Business has been in touch with the CEOs of the big three automakers, including Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford. He spoke with our friend, Fox Business's Grady Trimble. He says this: just because a plant goes down doesn't mean it's going to come back up quickly. He says sometimes it takes days or weeks for a plant to come back up. He says, how much higher can you go with wage increases, with health and pension benefits that they're asking for? And so this is so interesting. We're going to probably be hearing as well from the big three CEOs as this strike is about to get underway here in just about 45 minutes' time. All right, let's take a quick commercial break. I'm Andrew Kraft. Still a lot more stories left in this hour when we come back.
Nebraska, Kansas, you've got some scattered showers and thunderstorms. Those are going to linger throughout the day on Friday. You can see Friday afternoon, highest coverage across Kansas and Colorado, pretty scattered elsewhere. Friday evening, northeastern New Mexico, western Texas, northern Texas, into Colorado, still scattered showers and thunderstorms. We're not done there. Some of you have got the chances all the way into the upcoming weekend. Take a look at Denver. This is your forecast for Friday. Waking up with rain. Make sure you've got the rain gear ready to go. Here's that risk for some flash flooding. It is likely Friday across central Texas, including areas like Abilene, and still a possibility elsewhere, from Denver into Pueblo, Colorado, Dodge City, the panhandle of Oklahoma, northeastern New Mexico, and from the Texas panhandle down into southern Texas. Austin and San Antonio, I don't want to rule out some isolated flash flooding. Most of the possible flash flood threat means it's going to be not only very isolated, but it should be more nuisance type flooding rather than a major flash flood event. But speaking of Texas, let's really hone in there, because I want to make sure I not only show you Dallas and Waco, but also Houston too. So Friday morning, Dallas and Waco, you're heading to work in the middle of showers and thunderstorms. I don't want to rule out a couple of severe ones too. 10 a.m. that continues. That continues for you through your lunchtime, and then Houston batter up by Friday early evening, late afternoon, whatever you consider 5 o'clock in the evening. Houston, you're getting nailed with some nasty thunderstorms. So while Dallas and Waco is getting it in the morning commute, Houston, you're going to be getting it during your evening commute on a Friday nonetheless. So that's the last thing you want to round out your Friday. But you can still see in western Texas and the Texas panhandle at 5 o'clock, you still got a couple showers and thunderstorms, and those linger all the way into Friday night. And for some of you, you still have that chance into Saturday. And unfortunately for South Texas, you've actually got some chances into Sunday. Now it's dry there. This is the latest.
There is a lot more to learn.
The group of 16 experts did not find that UFOs originate from extraterrestrial life, but they also did not have access to classified documents. Interest in UFOs is spiking after a whistleblower testified before Congress in the summer, accusing the U.S. government of covering up evidence of non-human intelligence. And that has some lawmakers wanting everything out in the open.
That's all I said during the hearings. Don't bring me any little green man. Don't bring me flying saucers. Just bring me transparency.
The Department of Defense launched a website that allows the public to review declassified information on UFOs. It would also give government employees and service members the chance to submit reports about sightings. In Washington, Mather Rivera, Fox News.
Madeline, thanks so much. You might remember, if you were watching the first RNC primary debate, Chris Christie, he got a question from Martha McCallum about the UFO phenomenon as well. So it's top of mind for so many, but it's becoming more transparent of an issue, especially there in the halls of the Capitol. We spoke with one of the leading proponents of getting more information out there about UFOs. That's, of course, Tim Burchett, the congressman, the Republican from Tennessee. And also now we're going to hear from NASA Administrator Bill Nelson upon the release of this new report there. Let's keep watching.
Near the mouth of a river. Now we're going up to the top of the cliff where the scientists feel that there could be the best examples of if there were life there millions of years ago. Whether we're dealing with Perseverance or the James Webb Space Telescope, which searches for exoplanets with signs of habitability, we are looking for signs of life, past and present. And it's in our DNA to explore and to ask why things are the way they are. In June of last year, NASA commissioned an independent study team to examine unidentified anomalous phenomena. We did so with a few goals in mind. First, to examine how NASA can use our expertise and instruments to study UAP from a scientific perspective. Second, shift the conversation about UAP from sensationalism to science, and to make sure that whatever we find, or whatever we recommend, to make sure that information is shared transparently around the world. There's a global fascination with UAP. On my travels, one of the first questions I often get is about these sightings. And much of that fascination is due to the unknown nature of it. Think about it. Most UAP sightings result in very limited data. That makes it even more difficult to draw scientific conclusions about the nature of UAP. And so this independent study team brought together some of the world's leading scientists, data, and artificial intelligence experts, aerospace safety specialists, all with a specific charge from me, which is to tell how to apply the full focus of science and data to UAP. And this is the first time that NASA has taken concrete action to seriously look into UAP. And this independent study team was just that, independent. Now, NASA has a statutory authority to look for life in the universe. And when you think of the universe, and especially what we have learned from the James Webb Space Telescope, how vast that it is. We knew before, and it was a NASA scientist, Dr. John Mather, who got the Nobel that determined that the universe was 13.8 billion years old. And over the years, particularly accelerated in the last century, we have an understanding that, of course, ours is not the only galaxy. And there are billions and billions of galaxies, and each of those galaxies, including our own, have billions and billions of stars. And with the James Webb looking at the exoplanets, we are now beginning to discover, and somewhere out there, we will discover another medium-sized stony planet around a medium-sized sun or star at just the right distance, not too far, not too close, with a tilt in its axis that rotates, that has carbon, that will have a habitable atmosphere. If you ask me, do I believe there's life in a universe that is so vast that it's hard for me to comprehend how big it is? My personal answer is yes. But I asked some of our scientists. As a matter of fact, the Washington Post editorial board asked us to come down to the question, what is the mathematical probability that there is life out there in the universe? And if you calculate in billions of stars, in billions of galaxies, that there's replicated what I just said, another stony planet. The answer was, what's the likelihood? At least 1 trillion. That's from our scientist. So we start this without any preconceived notions, but understanding that we're in a world of discovery. And we, NASA, have taken for the first time concrete action to seriously look into UAP. And this independent study team is exactly that. It's independent. They work to develop recommendations about how NASA could better examine them from a scientific perspective. And the top takeaway from the study is that there is a lot more to learn. The NASA independent study team did not find any evidence that UAP have an extraterrestrial origin, but we don't know what these UAP are. That's why I'm announcing that NASA has appointed a NASA director of UAP research. They are being tasked with developing and overseeing the implementation of NASA's vision for UAP research. We will use NASA's expertise to work with other agencies to analyze UAP. We will use AI and machine learning to search the skies for anomalies, as we have been searching the heavens and will continue to search the heavens for habitability. And NASA will do this transparently. So while today is a significant step for NASA, it's certainly not our final step. And we're going to share more with you, and I want to introduce you to Dr. Nikki Fox, who is the head of our Science Mission Directorate. Nikki.
Good morning.
All right, so we just wanted to show you a little bit there of NASA Administrator Bill Nelson talking about this report that was released today, explaining and being transparent about the phenomenon known as unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP. You heard that a lot there. So wanted to make sure we brought that to you. We know there's so much interest in all things UFO, especially this year. Hope you found that informative. Let's take a quick commercial break. We're at the bottom of the hour. Union members are gathering. They're on the picket line all ahead of this strike. In about 30 minutes, it's going to begin. We have live pictures there in Detroit. We'll have it in just a moment. Welcome back here, too, live now from Foxwell. UAW members are gathering around these plants for this stand-up strike that's going to be called into action in just under 30 minutes or so. Let's go out now to some of these union members speaking with reporters down on the ground there in Detroit about what they are demanding and whether or not, if this strike goes into effect, which it's going to, how long it might last.
Have to hear, the rhetoric or the shop talk somewhere else.
And actually, let's talk about that. How do you think this will play a role on families? Because you all definitely probably are not the only family that actually, works in these plants.
Yeah, well, it's strenuous, but we got each other back. Whatever we need, the community gonna support UAW just like this UAW have been supporting everyone else.
Is there anything that you would like to say to President Shawn Fain?
Just gonna say thank you.
Yep, we're gonna say thank you.
Say thank you. High five, y'all. Come on, man, family. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I saw you the entire time. You look like you was just nervous. I am. Like you don't want to do it? Yeah. High five. Boom. You good. You good.
Well, this is
Okay, so we caught just a little bit of that conversation there from some of our reporters down on the ground outside of that Ford plant there in Wayne, Michigan, right outside of Detroit. Also, Fox 2 Detroit's Dave Spencer, he's on the ground there as well, speaking with some of these UAW members. Let's listen to some of these conversations.
Two, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay, so they said that they started these, negotiations in the summer. Did you think you would get to this point, or what did you think?
No, I never did. It's life changing. Yeah. It's a big step for all of us. It been a bunch of talk,
right?
But now that since we're here, I just can't believe we made it this far.
Do you think real change? I keep hearing things from the automakers say we're offering historic, packages that we've never offered before. Do you think big change will come from this?
I really do. Yeah, big change. Yep, I'm hoping for the best.
Yeah. In the meantime, you're out here supporting. Talk a little bit about that. What you're seeing here.
Yeah, just I got all my union brothers and sisters. We out here supporting. It got everybody holding signs. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing moment to capture. To get everybody together like this is feel good to see. We got our red shirts.
How much faith do you have in your leadership at this point?
I'm behind him 100%. He do his thing. He do his thing.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Well done.
All right.
Appreciate you. Good luck.
Okay, so wanted just to show you some of those conversations that are happening there outside of that Ford plant in Wayne, Michigan. And you can see there, this is what it says, UAW, stand up. You can see there that message loud and clear being received to the big three automakers there. And so you can kind of make out as well some of the other soon-to-be striking UAW members gathering there on that boulevard. You can see the horns, you can hear the horns rather, you can see the signs. UAW on strike, so it's almost official there. As we continue to follow these scenes, bring you these live pictures from in and around these plants, especially in the Detroit area. Remember that one with the stand-up strike that was called for, that Ford plant there in Wayne, Michigan. That's what you're looking at right now. The local 900 in Region 1A, they're walking off at midnight there in Michigan. So you can see a lot of our reporters on the ground, a lot of these UAW members kind of congregating on both sides of the street here on the sidewalk as this strike is about to officially get underway in the next 25 minutes or so. We're being told that there's probably not going to be an agreement anytime soon here. Fox 2 Detroit is all over this. Let's listen.
Union President Shawn Fain made the historic announcement on Facebook Live just a short time ago.
Tonight, for the first time in our history, we will strike all three of the big three at once.
As Fain said, this is going to be what he calls a stand-up strike strategy. During his speech tonight, he called on workers to walk out of three plants. They include the Ford Michigan Assembly Plant, Local 900 in Wayne, the Stellantis Toledo Assembly Plant, Local 12, and a GM plant in Missouri. We are just moments away from the start of that strike. That contract expires at 11:59.
And as we all know, after weeks of negotiations, there appears to still be no deal. Fox 2's Dave Kinchin joining us live with the latest. And Dave, what sort of action are you seeing? I know you're live there at Solidarity House.
Yeah, we've seen people driving in, the gate opens, they go in, and then, or they come out, they leave. We were peppering questions, you know, are you close to a deal, anything like that. Didn't hear anything because the windows never rolled down as people drove in. Likely officials with the union drove into Solidarity House not looking to talk to media. The numbers just aren't adding up to avoid a strike. GM put out a deal. They say it's their best one in 115 years. 20% is what they're saying. The union wants 35% increases in terms of wages. Ford's at 20%, and Stellantis 17.5, the last known number there. And of course, about 150,000 people working at all of the big three operations who are represented by UAW. So right now the question is, what are the risks and benefits of a strike? And here we go. The 11th hour is essentially here, and the UAW's stand-up strike plans against the big three are set to change the game, according to labor experts. And in some ways, it already has.
They've kept everyone guessing. I think it is a game changer in terms of how these negotiations have played out. In some sense, we saw maybe a bit of a delay in some of the economic offers back and forth. I'm not sure if that's because some of the big three were waiting to see what other ones would do, who would blink first, or if it was just a response to this new strategy.
Brett Miller is a labor relations attorney in downtown Detroit. He says the UAW's historic strategy of ramping up the strike action in a phased-in way is gutsy and carries its fair share of risk, especially as the big three continues the expensive transition into the EV world.
If you are sitting in the boardroom at one of the big three, you're weighing the costs of what the union is asking for versus the potential business loss. Again, looking at a $3.6 billion loss GM faced just a few years ago in 2019 from a strike. These are some very serious calculations that you have to consider when weighing what's a fair deal.
Auto analysts say it could work and the big three might be cornered with no choice but to get closer to the union's demands of acceptable double-digit pay percentage increases, the wiping out of tiers, and proper inflation adjustments. Or it could backfire, especially if the strike goes too long.
If it goes on for too long, both parties suffer losses which it is difficult to recoup. And they're vulnerable in the sense that the pressures for electrification and the competition in the industry are keen and threatening to the company. And also the union, it represents a decreasing share of the industry, which is more non-union. And obviously that may cause some companies to rethink their strategy about where they want to assign work.
Wayne State business professor Merrick Masters says the big three are likely planning to try and turn the tables.
Look like that in effect they lock out the employees at some sites and that they shut down facilities so that they put pressure on the union and say, you're going to have all your workers out on strike and you're going to have to pay the strike benefits. The more of them that are out on strike, the more pressure you're going to feel the longer they're out for you to concede something.
And breaking right now, we just saw a bunch of vehicles, a whole caravan leaving Solidarity House, driving up Jefferson right now, some Suburbans and some other vehicles there. Very likely some union heads as this operation is about to start at midnight. Again, no known deals reached between the UAW and the Detroit Three right now. The contracts, the proposals that the big three offered, the counter proposals, did not end tiers as the UAW wanted. That's what they said. They wanted cost of living, inflation adjustments. The union says they didn't get anything that was adequate there. And again, they're separated on the numbers. And by the way, going back to March when Sean Fain took power, he said this is going to be very different. We're going to negotiate directly and differently and boldly. And here we are on the verge of a historic strike, the first time the UAW has ever walked the picket lines at all big three members' properties. So we got you covered all the way through. Reporting live at Solidarity House, Dave Kinchin, Fox 2 News.
Interesting what Professor Masters had to say to you tonight about what the big three may end up trying to do as a counterstrike against this by locking employees out, essentially bringing them to their knees, the strikers, because they run out of strike pay. At the end of the day here, this is going to cost a lot of money if the two aren't willing to concede. I know back in 2019, the GM strike against one automaker cost $3.5 billion.
Yeah, that was a big price tag there, and that really hurt. And it took a while to bounce back from that. And even Sean Fain has said that he knows that there would be some strain on that strike fund. And so that is a major concern if there is a lockout there. So definitely the brinksmanship continuing on all sides tonight, and we're watching all of it very, very closely.
We know you are. Dave Kinchin for us live tonight. Thank you. Let's turn now to Ford's Michigan Assembly in Wayne.
Yes, we are expecting workers to walk off the job there at any moment. Fox News' Dave Spencer joining us live from outside the plant. And Dave, what sort of activity are you seeing? We obviously ourselves see some people with some signs.
Yeah, there's plenty of activity here. There's people standing in the median where I am, and behind me is the Ford plant, where we have been seeing a steady stream of vehicles pouring out there, and they are greeted by people wearing red, holding signs. These are fellow union members, and it doesn't stop here. It goes across the street over into the Union Hall parking lot. This all began roughly about an hour ago, right as we saw Sean Fain put that message out on Facebook saying that we're going to do this at 3 strategic locations, one of them being here, of course. He also said that he plans to join those protesters here, so we're eagerly awaiting what he'll have to say to them. We had a chance to speak to many of these people who are enthused, and they're pumped up about their leadership right now. They seem to have the support, or Sean Fain seems to have their support. We'll see how long that lasts for. So hopefully that they could come to an agreement soon. But in the meantime, they will be here. Some of them went right off of their shift. It was a guy I spoke with from Livonia, for example, said he heard about what was going on over at his plant and said, I have to come down there and show solidarity with my fellow union members. Take a listen to what he had to say now.
Before I got this job, I was a trucking company. I was managing a trucking company. I left that job because I thought this was my dream job, to drive a semi-truck for Ford Motor Company. That don't exist no more. They closed that department. They made all those guys take jobs elsewhere.
And what he had to tell me was that this isn't really about wages for him. It's about ending the tier structure for future generations, something that he has been a member of. His whole family has been a member of that union. So he is really right now throwing his full support, as well as many of others, behind Sean Fain, thinking that this tactic will work for them. And we'll have time will tell to see if that is the case. We still have a few minutes, 15 minutes, before any official strike begins. But as we can see, many people here are anticipate that to happen. We will be out here, of course, covering this for you and bringing you any updates as they become available. Reporting live in Wayne, Dave Spencer, Fox 2 News. Back to you.
Yeah, I know you say that not everyone is talking about salaries, but we do know that these autos made record profits in the last few years, and the executives have benefited from that. I know Mr. Frawley there, I think his salary was quoted as something like $21 million over the course of 1 year. These men and women are saying, hey, we'd like a raise too. They just can't seem to meet on a number.
Yeah, that's true. And I talked to some people about bonuses, and they said, hey, look, I didn't see any of that bonus money that was reported widely in the news. So, you know, there's some discrepancy about how much those Tier 2 should be making versus how much the Tier 1s are making, and the timeline that it takes to reach those tiers. So they just want to wipe that away and even the playing field for everybody. We'll see if it comes to that.
Yeah, Mr. Frawley, in the meantime, saying Ford simply can't afford to do a 40+% raise. Interesting times, ones that you will be on, we know. Dave Spencer for us live tonight.
Although Fain only named 3 plants across the country for the stand-up strike at midnight, union locals are busy making preparations for if and when their factory is called.
Stellantis workers in Sterling Heights felt confident they would be picked. Fox 2's Jessica Deepbank joins us live with that story. Jessica.
We've been monitoring really a cloak of secrecy around this strike, and that really meant that all of the UAW locals had to be ready and willing. We talked to UAW local 1,700 here in Sterling Heights, representing about 6,000 Stellantis employees. They actually rented out a storefront in a nearby strip mall nearby the Stellantis plant here in Sterling Heights. They were making signs, they were assembling. Although they didn't get tapped, we talked to the president about what a strike looks like, and it's really uniform uniform across the board, regardless of what plant it's at.
Everyone is fired up and they're willing to fight for what they believe they deserve.
Charles Bell is the president of UAW 1700, representing 6,000 members with Stellantis. His team posted up at a makeshift strike hub at the foot of Sterling Heights automotive plants, both Ford and Stellantis. Preparations in place, fencing erected at entrances of the plants to keep strikers safe. This is what it looks like when UAW members are tapped to march.
We gotta go to different areas and escort our people out.
Okay.
In an orderly fashion without any sabotage or anything else.
Then to the picket line for the newly dubbed stand-up strike. It means only some plants take part at first.
We have picketers that would immediately go to their position, and they would be the midnight folks, and they would stay on position until the next group of folks come in.
The stand-up strike ratchets up pressure by adding more striking workers in time, designed to keep the big three guessing and for longevity.
It also helps the union because they don't have to pay strike pay for all 145,000 UAW members, and that could drain their strike fund very fast.
Automotive industry expert Jeff Gilbert says the economic ripple starts almost immediately, but this one not as jarring as full-blown strikes of the past.
Well, the good news is the economic impact won't be as bad as it would have been had they walked out everywhere all at once. But there will be an economic impact, and it will grow as the strike goes on because the UAW has said it will add more plants if the negotiations aren't going their way.
Just about 11 minutes to that deadline, the strike deadline. Now, with this stand-up strike, it means that it can ramp up to put future pressure on the big three. So that means very well more workers at UAW plants across the country could be tapped if, in fact, this strike does happen. Reporting live in Sterling Heights, Jessica Dupnack, Fox 2 News.
All right, thanks, Jessica. And workers in Toledo are about to hit the picket line at the Stellantis plant, Local 12.
That's where we find Fox 2's Camille Amiri. She joins us live. And Camille, what's the scene there? It doesn't look very packed behind you.
Yeah, it's quiet right now. A lot of media here across the street, but we do hear and see a constant barrage of cars driving up and down, honking their horn, many of them with UAW signs. You can hear one right now, getting ready, we presume, for this 11:59 walkout. But right now, it's very quiet. You can feel the energy in the air for sure, but right now we're seeing a few people across the street from us. And like I said, the media all along here. We arrived just a short time ago. Of course, we headed down here as soon as we found out that this Jeep plant was one of the ones that would be walking out at 11:59. Of course, that coming from UAW President Shawn Fain during that announcement, that Facebook Live announcement at 10 o'clock. I think you can probably hear the horns. The cars are driving by. We are expecting a lot of people to come streaming out here, but right now it is all quiet. Of course, we will be out here continuing to monitor the situation. More horns you can hear right now. For now, we're live in Toledo. Camille Amiri, Fox 2 News.
Thanks, Camille, for the update. We'll check back with you later for sure.
And Taryn, the big three have only minutes left now to make that deal. If those deals don't come, the walkouts will begin. Now, we'll be back on air at 11:59. Stay with us on air and online for the latest developments as we watch what happens on this historic day.
I'm meteorologist Rick Schluterman.
All right, Andrew Kraft back here with Live Now. We wanted to let you listen in, watch Fox 2 Detroit's coverage there of this stand-up strike that is about to take place in about 9 minutes' time. So great job there. Fox 2's Roop Raj, a friend of Live Now, of course, guiding us all through. You saw Dave Kinchin, Dave Spencer, Jessica Dupnack, and others there stationed outside, team covered outside of these plants that will be striking starting at 11:59 Eastern in just a matter of minutes here. We want to take a quick commercial break. We have a few live pictures as well coming out of Detroit on this specific story. We'll have those when we come back.
first half of your weekend, Saturday is going to be the worst day for Hurricane Lee in the Northeast. That is going to be an inside day. Bismarck 71 sunny, Denver 77 sunny, Albuquerque 79, LA 75, San Francisco 68, Seattle you're still warm at 77. Still have chances for some rain in South Texas, especially across Florida as well. For Sunday, up and down the East Coast, chances for some scattered showers and storms from the southeast to the mid-Atlantic, especially back toward the Heartland and the Midwest. Chicago, Atlanta, you both have that chance actually. Central Plains drying out, brightening up, warming up. 70s and 80s, even have some 90s back in the forecast for Dallas. Los Angeles 75, San Francisco 68, and Seattle you're back closer to what you normally do this time of year. Don't forget, Fox Weather's your Hurricane HQ. Not only am I going to continue to give you updates throughout the end of this week, but we are going to be continuing to track Lee throughout the entirety of the weekend. We've got reporters and meteorologists from Massachusetts up into Nova Scotia. I've also got an update coming for you in a couple minutes. See you soon.
Darlings, your skin is thirsty. New Charlotte's Magic Water Cream.
There's only about 150,000 plus UAW members. That number was significantly higher a generation ago. So we now know that these strikes will begin starting momentarily. 3 locations, 3 local UAW chapters, one there in Missouri, one in Ohio, and one there in Wayne, Michigan. We have that shot. Let's take this shot full here. Let's listen in as we continue to follow this story. This is what we do here as we approach the top of the next hour, almost midnight there in Detroit. And UAW members are on the picket line, ready to go into full strike mode. Let's listen. All right, so there you see it is late on a Thursday night in Wayne, Michigan. Of course, you know Detroit Motor City, the birthplace of the automobile there. And now UAW members, well, they voted a couple of weeks ago to authorize this, and now it has come to this because the parties have not reached an agreement about their wages, about their benefits, about all of these factors when you adjust for inflation, about their health care, about their retirement funds, about employees that are on this tier system, about how to rise through the ladder of these major corporations like GM, like Ford, like Stellantis. So this is what you're seeing right now as we approach the top of the next hour when this strike will be official. So we're going to replay for you in the overnight hours some of UAW President Shawn Fain's remarks. Now, he's somewhat of an insurgent himself. Earlier this year, he won the election. He beat out the incumbent by about 500 votes. He was kind of an underdog, if you will, to lead the UAW. And so clearly he is meeting this moment, his leadership being tested now for what has not happened in the UAW's entire history. All 3 automaker unions at once, striking at once, and that is why this is so significant. Remember, back in 2019, it was just GM workers, and they were striking for about 40 days. You can see there the fist pumps in the air, the shouts, the signs in the air. UAW workers, they're fired up about this. They want the big 3 automakers to meet their demands. That has not been the case just yet. So you can see a lot of these workers honking their cars, waving the flags, waving their signs, pumping their fists in the air. This is quite something. Let's keep listening. Okay, and so we're going to be relying on our Fox 2 Detroit team members there for more coverage as this deadline is just seconds away from being reached. I'm Andrew Kraft. Thanks so much for being with us. You see the commotion. You see all the activity outside of this Ford plant there in Wayne, Michigan. They're about to strike in mere seconds. Also there in Missouri, also in Toledo as well. And like I said, the labor environment ramping up, very, very active, very restive. You see there everyone fired up, ready to go. Because of this, now it remains to be seen how long this is going to last, whether or not the parties can reach an agreement in a timely manner. Fox 2 in Detroit has more.
UAW President Shawn Fain, unable to strike a deal with the Big Three, has now called for a strike against Ford, GM, and Stellantis all at once.
And right now you are looking at live pictures over the Ford Michigan assembly plant, local 900 in Wayne. It is one of 3 U.S. factories where workers are hitting the picket lines tonight.
Takes a minute for them to look at the clock, see what the time is, and follow those marching orders that have been given earlier by their leader. The other 2 include the Stellantis Toledo assembly plant, Local 12, and a General Motors plant in Missouri.
Local workers there have been making preparations for this very moment. Fox 2's Dave Spencer joining us live from that Ford plant in Wayne right now with more on the picket. Dave, you have quite a few people behind you right now.
Oh, yeah, the crowd grows by the minute here. This is all part of the stand-up strike that began roughly at around 11 o'clock. That's when Shawn Fain took to Facebook to spread his message about the 3 places he was strategically targeting, one of them being the Ford plant right across the street here on Michigan Avenue in Wayne. We see people filling the median now. About, I don't know, a half hour ago, that's when we saw the cars filing out of there. So I've been told unofficially, this hasn't been confirmed, it's not going to be a ceremonial walk off at midnight, but the people continue to line the streets here, lining up, filling this parking lot, double parking people in. We're standing outside of UAW Local 900. The atmosphere is very jovial at this time. There's truly a lot of support for Shawn Fain. I had a chance to speak with some of the members as they were arriving here, some of them just getting off their shift at a different plant, saying they have to come out here and show solidarity with their UAW brothers. Take a listen to what some of them had to say.
No, it's life-changing. Yeah. You know, it's a big step for all of us. It been a bunch of talk. Right. But now that since we're here, I just can't believe, you know, we made it this far. I got all my, you know, union brothers and sisters. We out here supporting, you know, it got everybody holding signs. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing moment to capture, you know, to get everybody together like this. It feels good to see.
So yeah, they're still obviously gathering here at the UAW Local 900 Hall. We're told Shawn Fain will make his way from the Solidarity Hall down here, and he's expected to address these groups of supporters, kind of updating them on what's happening. But in the meantime, we're seeing everyone honking, showing support, waving those signs. A lot of activity here as they line the streets of Michigan right across from the Ford Assembly. Midnight has come and gone. They are working without a contract. We will see how long this lasts, but we will be here in the meantime bringing you any breaking news that develops right here in Wayne. Reporting live, Dave Spencer, Fox 2 News. Back to you.
Yeah, I know there's several things that many of these workers want that Shawn Fain's talked about. The 40% raise, the cost of living increase, restoring the pension, and then that 32-hour work week. Out of all of those, when you talk to the men and women near you, what do they tell you is the most important?
Yeah, the one thing that they kept saying over and over is the tier structure. They said that they don't want to see people coming in and making so little when the people that are in the top tier make so much. They want to see that equity spread out across the board. But they also have a lot of faith in what Shawn is doing. They like this strategy. We'll see how it plays out, striking the stand-up strike as they're calling it, hitting all three at once, the big 3. So this is one of them. So we'll see how it goes. You're hearing chanting going on behind behind me now. So again, the mood is very positive right now, but we are in the infancies of this strike, 5 minutes in. So we'll see how long that mood stays that way once the rubber meets the road here.
Now you're starting to hear the chanting behind you. There's a lot of passion and a lot of thirst for a fair contract, and that's what they're looking for over there. Dave Spencer for us live tonight. Thank you.
And as we mentioned, workers at the Stellantis assembly plant in Toledo were also instructed to walk off the job at midnight.
Let's get right to Fox News' Camille and Mary tonight. Camille, what's the atmosphere like right now?
Yeah, well, it is pretty chaotic. I'm going to step out of the way. A lot of people, you can see the cars all leaving as they exit the plant because obviously walking off the job. You can see more people. Again, as we said in our earlier live hit, just a constant barrage of honking cars, traffic, people very obviously energized about this. Not necessarily what everybody wanted, but of course following with the UAW and saying that, hey, we're taking a stand. As you heard Dave mention all those key points, really we're not seeing as much traffic as far as foot traffic right now, but you can see the people who are on the sidewalk. They're all cheering everybody on. I presume that people will be driving off property and then actually coming here with their signs, but obviously they don't want to be on property of Stellantis during this strike. But again, everybody driving, I don't know if you can see all these cars lined up to leave, and everyone's honking as they're leaving, being cheered on by the people who are here. So that is the scene right now in Toledo. Of course, we will stay here and start to talk to the people once they actually get on the picket line. We presume that they'll be out here for, obviously throughout the night and into the morning. But that is what's going on here in Toledo. I'll send it back to you in the studio in Detroit.
And Camille, what's interesting is this is a very strategic strike, and 3 plants chosen first. Obviously, President Shawn Fain of the UAW wanted to be able to make those strike funds last longer. It will be interesting to see which plants may be next. Is anybody hearing anything, or possibly any of the protesters saying anything about who may be next?
Well, we tried to talk to somebody from the union at like 11:52. He wasn't ready to talk, obviously waiting because he knew everybody would be walking out. It was, like you said, very strategic. 1 plant in Metro Detroit, 1 in Toledo, and then 1 in Missouri, obviously with the big 3. Not what we expected. I think we all kind of thought they would all be in Detroit, the Detroit area. But again, these are the first 3. We'll have to see what happens next. Will people be walking out at other plants in Metro Detroit, across the country? This is what Shawn Fain has said from the very beginning. This is going to be a strategic, not everybody walks off the job. Many people still working at midnight without a contract. But again, you can just hear and see the atmosphere here. People very energized. And I think this is going to be a long night, long morning for everybody who intends to stay here for the long haul. I'll send it back to you, Taryn.
As you can hear the support for the strikers. And Camille, we know you're in charge of our coverage there in Toledo. We will check back with you. Thank you.
Hey, we're getting a response right now just moments ago from Stellantis. They say we're extremely disappointed by the UAW leadership's refusal to engage in a responsible manner to reach a fair agreement in the best interest of our employees, their families, and our customers. We immediately put the company in contingency mode and will take all the appropriate structural decisions to protect our North American operations and the company. And so, yes, we want to get back over, I believe, to Dave Spencer, because we understand that Mr. Fain himself will be arriving at that location in just a matter of a few minutes here.
All right, Dave, do we have you here live at this point? Okay, yes.
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you. Yep. And it is pretty chaotic here. I mean, obviously, they're all aware that Shawn Fain is heading down to this location. We did see Debbie Dingle in the crowd. I attempted to get her for a live interview. She said, talk to the workers. The story is about the workers. So we've been speaking with the workers throughout the evening. They started arriving, say, around 11 o'clock. That's shortly after Shawn Fain took to Facebook talking about this strategy and the places that he said he was going to start that stand-up strike, which began in earnest roughly 10 minutes ago. And since then, the parking lot here at the UAW Local 900 Hall has been completely overrun. There are double parking people in. They are double parking people in at the lot next door. That's just showing you the amount of people that have come out here heeding the call of the UAW members. Shawn Fain specifically, again, waiting for him to pull into this parking lot, speak to the supporters here, and tell him the plan, tell him where they're at in terms of the negotiation. I have noticed that a lot of people are in his corner. They think that they have the leadership needed to get the job done here. So we're going to go and try to find some people and hear what they have to say about this effort and what they're seeing out here tonight. So let's talk to one of these gentlemen right now. Sir, let me bother you for a quick second. So, you've been out here for what, about an hour now?
About an hour, yeah.
Are you surprised at everything that's been happening since they've been here?
Yes, I am. I mean, it's beautiful. Look at all these people out here. They supporting our union. We're doing a great thing, you know. I'm loving it.
I saw that Debbie Dingle is amongst the crowd. I don't know if you had a chance to see her, but it shows you that you have support in Washington. And how does that do? How does that fuel you?
A lot. It's a blessing, you know, just to see this, you know, it's unbelievable. Words can't even describe it, you know.
And I was talking to you earlier, and you were talking about how it seems to me that a lot of people do support Shawn and what he's about, and you like this tactic thus far?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. This shows the support. It shows how strong the union is and how well people come together, you know?
A lot of people have been saying it's not really about the wages, it's about other things that are is that the way you feel too? What do you say is the most important thing that you want to see in this new contract?
I just want everybody to come together, unity. Let's bring everybody together. Like you said, it's more about the wages. This is a family. You know, we work hard. We select, you know, we do our thing in the plant. Let's just come together and let's, you know, make it happen.
So you're hoping that once this contract is settled, this will be the last time you'll have to do anything like this?
I say it's for the future. It starts here. And once we start here, for whatever future come, then, you know, we help our generations to come. So that's what I think. It starts here. Hopefully we don't have to do it again. But, you know, now we sending a message out.
You are sending a message, definitely, right. And so we see a lot of red shirts. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. We see a lot of red shirts, a lot of solidarity here as we, again, wait for Shawn Fain to come down. So when that happens, we will come and we will bring that to you as soon as that becomes available. We're going to send it back to you, Roop.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the strategy here. And of course, Mr. Fain alluded to this, saying it's a stand-up strike. We're seeing these 3 facilities across the country. This one here seems to be the epicenter with Congresswoman Dingle and others, and Mr. Fain there. The stand-up strike is all about kind of targeting these different areas and saying, hey, look, we're going to keep these 3 on strike. Then maybe they'll swap and someone else will go on strike as well. But they have to be cognizant of the fact that they only have so much money in the strike fund to go.
Yeah, and I think that is the whole reason for that, because if everybody, you know, I've been asked why isn't everybody just walking off the job at once? Won't that send a strong message? That might send a strong message initially, but as you mentioned, they only have so much money to keep that strategy going. So this is something that they have strategically decided to implement here. We'll see how effective it is. This is just minutes old, so there's no real way to tell, as this is historic. They've never had any strike of this magnitude against all 3 at once. So I guess we'll see how long this support will last and what the outcome will be here.
And as soon as Shawn Fain shows up, I know, Dave, you'll alert us, and we'll go back live to you right here on Fox 2. Dave Spencer for us live at the Fort Wayne Assembly Local 500. Thanks for the live report.
Well, as we've mentioned, tonight's strike follows weeks of negotiations.
Let's get live to Fox 2's Dave Kinchin. He's outside of the UAW Solidarity House. And, Dave, it's interesting. We're seeing the real noise outside of these buildings, but the real action was taking place in the building behind you.
Yeah, that's right. And we just saw that major convoy leave here not too long ago. I'd say, I don't know, maybe 10 cars, 10 vehicles, including some Suburbans or something of that type, leaving here, leaving Solidarity House, heading up Jefferson, likely to where Dave Spencer is right now. We're not quite sure, although perhaps President Shawn Fain was in that convoy as well. Again, this is that stand-up strike, the history, the roots of this, the inspiration coming from the sit-downers strike back in Flint in the 1930s. That was really one of the strikes that got the UAW moving into the, okay, we're going to go to Rashida Tlaib, Congresswoman right now out of Detroit. Let's go to that right now.
That is absolutely just immoral. We can't continue to do that. But my question was,
President Biden should come out and say that. The American people.
Should he do more than that?
He should go out and, by just saying that, representing the American people. Majority, I think, is 75%. Of American people, polling is coming out saying that they support the workers. Why? Because again, why would we even have the support of the bailout in 2009? It was because we all knew somebody that was going to be impacted, or a town that was going to be impacted. And we said to ourselves, you know what? We're going to sacrifice. We're going to do what we can to keep them afloat. And now that they're struggling, they're turning their backs on
and
it.
as we've done so much to move towards a sustainable future, towards EV, we need to make sure that we are inclusive of all workers, making sure that all contracts are inclusive of the workers, making sure that we're, as we move towards just transition, that we're making sure that we're thinking about the workers, putting workers first as we move towards a sustainable future that helps us to address climate change, taking climate action, that we are inclusive of workers, making sure that no workers are left behind, making sure that workers who have been unemployed are able to be a part of those contracts that move us towards a sustainable future.
Thank you both. Appreciate that. All right, so that was Pamela Pugh, and that was Rashida Tlaib talking about this effort here as what we're seeing. You know, they're obviously out here supporting, standing by the union workers as they walked off their shift just roughly 15 minutes ago, and we are still waiting Sean Fain. She was asked, Rashida Tlaib was, about President Biden, should he do more, and she is hoping that maybe he will come out and say that he supports the American workers, so she's still waiting to see that. In the meantime, obviously, she's here showing her support. Again, the crowd continues to grow by the minute, eagerly awaiting the UAW president to show up. Back to you guys.
All right, interesting. 10 days ago, President Biden predicted there wouldn't be a strike, but then today, understanding the severity of this, on the phone with both Fain and the Big Three. It'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out. Dave, we'll be checking in with you in just a few moments. Thank you.
Right now, though, we are going to check back in with Dave Kitchen. He's been live all night long at the Solidarity House with the UAW. And really, Dave, we're all
All right, Fox 2 Detroit there doing an incredible job reporting this breaking story as we speak. You also heard there some Democratic lawmakers on the picket line there at the strike themselves, including the Democratic Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, also Debbie Dingell in the mix as well. So we'll be following this story so closely into the weekend, no doubt. Hopefully we will hear from President Biden. Of course, he always touts his union bona fides, and so we'll wait and see how he is responding to this. But to Roop's point, he predicted that this was not going to happen. Today he was on the phone with UAW President Fain and also the CEOs of the big three automakers as well, you know, trying to encourage them to come to some type of an agreement. But alas, that has come to pass, and we are now in full strike mode. So more on that after the break. And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Well, that's going to do it for some of our live coverage here. We still have some of these live pictures as well as we go into the late evening, overnight hours. The strike is on there, especially in Wayne, Michigan, outside Detroit at this Ford plant there. You can see as well, what a shot of all these UAW workers walking off the job. Also, they are awaiting right now their president, their leader, Shawn Fain, to join them at this strike there. And so that is what they are waiting for at the moment. We're told by Fox 2 Detroit there he should be expected any moment. But in the meantime, let's listen to his Facebook Live announcement from earlier in the night about why this is happening, why it has come to this. Let's listen.
Good evening, UAW family. I'm going to be brief because time's of the essence. For the past 24 hours, we've been actively bargaining with Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. For the first time in our union's history, we had all three companies bargaining right here at the Solidarity House, leading into the final hours of our strike deadline. We've been working hard trying to reach a deal for economic and social justice for our members. We have been firm. We are committed to winning an agreement with the Big Three that reflects the incredible sacrifice and contributions UAW members have made to these companies. We've been open. The companies, the members, and the public know that what we've been fighting for. And we've been clear. Midnight on the evening of September 14th is a deadline. UAW family, that deadline is nearly here. Tonight, for the first time in our history, we will strike all three of the Big Three at once. We are using a new strategy, the stand-up.
All right, that was Shawn Fain, UAW president, from earlier tonight, talking about the strike. He has just gotten to this strike scene. We do want to take this for you. We have the shot here. Let's take that. All right, Shawn Fain is in the building. There is the UAW president. He is the lead. That's not him right there. He is in the GM vehicle. There he is right there. You can see. Let's listen.
Yeah, well, good. Yeah. I guess you promised to interview two first. NBC Nightly News, I think. I don't know who it is, but
they're waiting down there.
All right, I'll talk to some members first real quick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Make a hole for me.
Make a hole.
Please.
Here. How significant is this night?
Go on, man. Oh my gosh, this is crazy.
Make a hole. Step back. I got him.
Oh my God.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I can't even.
All right, Fain there, greeting UAW members. Let's take this live on Fox 2 Detroit. This is what they've been waiting for. They've been waiting for their leader to address the crowd about what happens now. Let's listen.
Jubilation we've noticed starting at about 11 o'clock when they first started arriving, and now as he continues to make his way through the parking lot to try and greet some of his supporters and maybe share words of where they stand and give them some encouragement as this fight just now gets underway, this stand-up strike that they're attempting to do. Yeah, it's going to be a difficult time to get in there. I'm going to try my best here.
Well, while you're trying, Dave,
it is a tight squeeze.
While you're trying to get in there to that scrum, there, just curious from him, when we may hear from him, or maybe you know already, purpose of this, is it to fire up the union members, or is it to talk about strategy?
Yeah, I think that as soon as he gets over and gets a chance to speak to them, he'll probably try and fire them up and just kind of let them know. I'm going to try and stick my mic in there and see if we can hear something now.
Paying a
lot less in some cases for labor than these companies. How can you expect to actually get everything you're asking?
Shame on those competitors, number one. All this is the companies are trying to drive a race to the bottom, and we're better than that. America's better than that.
You talk about the raises that in your presentation the other night, you talked about the raises that are currently on the table from the big three. They've made some concessions. You've said they're not enough, but they have made some concessions. Have you put out any olive branches so far?
Yes. We gave counteroffers. And that's the first misconception that some of the corporate CEOs have been putting out, saying we haven't countered. We've had very constructive conversations. We made counteroffers again tonight. It's their fault. It's a shame that they waited till the last week to start meeting with us.
What do you say to Americans all over the country who might hear a roughly 20% pay raise? Sounds pretty good.
Well, you know what sounds good to me? There's a serious double standard in this country right now. There's a billionaire class and there's the rest of us. We're all expected to sit back and take the scraps and live paycheck to paycheck and scrape to get by. We're second-class citizens. And you know, the sad reality is, you know, when corporations fail, we pay the price. Our workers pay the price. We made all the sacrifice in the in the Great Recession. And you know, the sad reality is they've had a decade of record profits. When they're profitable, it's all theirs. They want to keep it all. And the sad reality is, you know, they've made $250 billion, the big three have, in the last decade. $21 billion in profits in the first 6 months of this year.
Why these three?
The price of cars have went up 30% in the last 4 years. CEO pay went up 40%. Nobody cried a river. Nobody put fear out then saying what it'll do to the economy. But by God, when workers ask for their fair share, it's the end of the world. It's got to stop. We're better than that, America.
All right, so Fain there with some pointed comments, reporters thronging around him there to try to get their questions in, but he's there with his members as this strike commences there. The UAW tweeting this just moments ago, saying, on strike at the big three, stand up strike, support the strikers, grab a support graphic for your timeline there. So we're going to be covering this story well into tomorrow and through the weekend there, but historic. Nonetheless, thanks so much for being with us here on Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. We want to get into some of these other top stories and events and things that we've showed you throughout the day already, including especially about the economy. President Biden also spoke with Shawn Fain and the CEOs of the big three automakers today to try to thwart this and avert this from happening. Ultimately, of course, that was unsuccessful. But he was in Maryland today. He was talking about his Bidenomics. Let's listen.
As my mother would instruct me to say, please excuse my back. I apologize. Sade, I just told her when she walked off the stage, when she's president and they say Joe Biden's out in the waiting room, she promised me she won't say Joe who. Please, do you have seats? Well, okay. I once said that early on in my tenure, Gov, and I said, everybody take a seat. None of them had seats. Well, I tell you what, you guys are impressive. And three of you are really close friends. And one's about to become a close friend. Gov, my problem is your biceps are a little small. And you're not in very good shape, but maybe I'll work with you, see what we can do. No, but really and truly, thank you. And I appreciate it very much. Senator Ben Cardin is one of the great, I hate the phrase public servants, but it is true. You know, I judge my colleagues over the years based on not just their intellectual capacity and their decency, but their integrity. The men you have here have incredible integrity. And it's just amazing. Chris Van Hollen is one of the reasons why I got elected vice president. He's the guy that did my debate prep for me. And without it, I'd been in real trouble. And Steny Hoyer, he and I share the eastern shore of Delaware and the western shore of Maryland. You know, that whole area in there, I keep telling him that it really is part of Delaware, but he doesn't. And David, thank you for being such a great partner. You've been great as well. I really do appreciate it. Prince George Community College, thanks for welcoming us here today. As many of you know, my wife is a professor at the community college. Matter of fact, she's teaching today. She has an expression, and I mean, this is the God's truth. She said, any country that out-educates us will out-compete us. Any country that out-educates us will out-compete us. The work you do here preparing students to compete in the economy of the future is real. It matters. This summer, I traveled to Chicago where I spoke about a fundamentally changing American economy. From an economy that for decades rewarded those who are at the very top and left everyone behind, who just on their own, basically. One that gives working people in this nation not only a fighting chance, they didn't do. You know, that trickle-down economy, not a whole lot. I grew up in we weren't poor, but we had a 3-bedroom split-level house with 4 kids and a grandpa living with us. And I didn't see a whole lot trickle down on my dad's kitchen table. But, you know, everybody deserves a shot at building the lives they deserve for their families. And we've done that. For the first time in a long time, we've climbed out of our great economic crisis. It's beginning to work for working people. This nation is very rich. And who have benefited the most has been the very rich, though, not everybody. And that's not how it should be. The new economic vision has been labeled by those in the Wall Street Journal and the London Economist and some of the more conservative press as Bidenomics. Well, they didn't mean it as a compliment at first. But now they're getting it. What's Bidenomics? It's about investing in, and I feel like I'm going to try not to repeat some of what my colleagues have already said, but it's about investing in America. Investing in America and investing in Americans, American people. It's about growing the economy from the middle out and the bottom up instead of the top down. Because when the middle class does well, the poor have a ladder up, and the wealthy still do very well. I'm a capitalist. If you guys go out here and you can make $1 billion, go get it. Just pay a little more in taxes. But look, but our friends on the other team, on the other side of the aisle, they have a very different vision for America. And by the way, you have this, I think you have this book on your table, on your chairs, maybe not. Well, I thought did my staff hand this out? You just have a little one. Well, I'm the only president who hands out the opposition's economic plan. Oh, you think I'm kidding? Protecting American Economic Security, fiscal year 2024, the budget, the study committee of Kevin Hearn, budget, and it goes on. This is the mega budget. You know, I want you to take a look at it. I think we have other copies of it. If we don't, we'll get you some. So since I've come to office, all they've really done is attack me and my economic plan. There hadn't been much else. Even though we've created, as I pointed out, over 13 million jobs, more jobs in 2 years than any president's created in a 4-year term. Even though, I'm not looking, even though we've had 19 straight months of unemployment under 4% for the first time in American history. Even though we have the lowest inflation rate of any major economy in the world, with core inflation rate the last 3 months at 2.4%. We got more to do, even though we've created 800,000 manufacturing jobs and a manufacturing boom we haven't seen in decades. Even though America, as we met here today, has the strongest economy in the world. Let me say that again. America has the strongest economy in the world of all major economics. And all they do is attack it. But, you know, you've noticed something. For all the time they spend attacking me and my plans, here's what they never do. They never talk about what they want to do. No, think about it. They tell you what they're against. What are they for? It's like they want to keep it a secret. I don't blame them. Well, today I'm going to talk about their plans. Look, we're going to talk about the MAGA Republican economic plan. And by the way, this is not your father's Republican Party. This is a different deal, all kidding aside. We've all worked with Republicans on the other side over our careers and become good friends, honest, decent people. Disagree like hell with them, but they were in the deal. They thought the institutions mattered. They thought it mattered. Well, guess what? Our democracy is at risk because I don't think they do think it matters anymore. because the country should know the facts. They should know the choice between Bidenomics and MAGAnomics. American growth and hope, and we're building, or American lost jobs, raising fears. MAGA Republicans gave us a few short years ago. Look, their plan, MAGAnomics, is more extreme than anything America's ever seen before. Just months ago, they went further than anyone has ever gone, threatening to default on the debt that's over 220 years old. Default, unless we gave them everything they wanted. We gave them nothing they wanted. We gave them nothing when we got a deal. But up to now, Republicans have given us a failed plan, a trickle-down economics that didn't work. My guess is your story is just like mine. Not much trickle-down ended up helping y'all. Instead, there's what trickle-down economics did. It shipped jobs overseas. It's a basic thing. Find the cheapest place in the world for labor, send the jobs there, the product there, and then import the product home. Well, you know, they hollowed out the main streets of America. They did the same for the middle class. They blew up the deficit. It produced an anemic economic growth, if any growth at all. And it stripped us dignity and pride and hope out of a community, one after another. You know, when you have those communities where there's been that factory employing 250 people in a small community for years and years, and then it closes down, you don't just lose the jobs. You lose a sense of belonging. People lose hope. They lose their pride. They lose their sense of pride. And now these MAGA Republicans have taken a plan I've never worked, and you know, look, the plan they're proposing never worked, but they decided to make it much, much worse. Now Republicans in Congress are doubling down with a plan that does three things. One, it cuts taxes even more for the very wealthy and big corporations. Two, it cuts Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Three, it raises costs for families, gutting investments in the middle class. Under their plan, the top 1%, 1/10 of 1% of households that make over $4 million a year are going to get another tax cut worth more than 2 times what the typical American family makes in a single year. Let me say that again. 2 times what the average family makes a year is going to be the tax cut they're proposing to give to the very wealthy. MAGA Republicans in Congress are also trying to undo the progress we made to make getting, you know, look, what I was able to do in what they call the G7, I was able to get them all to agree, and then around the world, all the democracies, agree that we were going to have a global minimum tax on corporations, meaning that you couldn't have offering a tax to build or make something in another country that's considerably lower than what the tax would be in that country where in fact it comes from. And that global minimum tax was finally agreed. It took me a better part of a year to get it done. And guess what? They want to get rid of it and let corporations go back to shifting jobs and profits overseas and avoiding paying taxes at home. And who's going to pay for that? Well, now we know, because the MAGA Republican Congress has finally released the budget I just referenced. And the answer is seniors and hardworking Americans are going to pay for it. They don't talk much about, but I got the budget. I mean, literally, it's here. And it's all in black and white. And just for your convenience, I thought I left it. My staff told me they left a copy on your seats, but I guess they didn't. So here's what it does. Their budget gives $5.1 trillion in additional tax cuts skewed to the wealthy people and big corporations, while cutting $700 billion from Social Security. Hear me now? $700 billion from Social Security and $1 trillion from Medicare. Let me say that again. Cut Social Security by $700 billion and Medicare by $1 trillion. They want to raise the Social Security retirement age, which means a 13% cut in benefits for seniors who retires at the age of 67. Imagine, you work your whole life. Every single paycheck you've had, you paid into that system. You thought you'd be able to retire with a little bit of dignity. Our MAGA Republicans in Congress also want to take Medicare away from more than 1 million Americans with disabilities. Now, if they hadn't done what they've done the last 2 years, you might not believe me. But I promise you, I gave you my word, that's what they're proposing. They want to cut Medicaid in the Affordable Care Act and the Children's Insurance Program by more than half. What does it mean? Under meganomics, as I'm calling it, tens of millions of Americans could lose their insurance. Waiting lists would skyrocket for seniors who need home or community-based care because they have nowhere else to go. They can't have no family to take care of them. Children would not get adequate health care. MAGA Republicans don't think we should be investing in education, and that's not an exaggeration. Students here at Prince George's Community College should know MAGA Republicans in Congress want to slash Pell Grants. More than 6 million students who count on these grants to be able to afford to go to college would lose it. That's what they're pressing for. You saw how they took on my attempt to eliminate student debt, although we're still going to eliminate a hell of a lot of student debt. And by the way, they actually want to cut 1,800 food safety inspectors. No, I'm serious. I mean, unless I was in, I don't know, Russia, you wouldn't think this would make any sense. But here, so they want to slash research on cures for cancer and Alzheimer's by nearly $4 billion. I got my team over here to go along with when President Obama allowed me to set up a whole effort to deal with cancer, allowing me to use any office, any administration facility. And we've invested billions of dollars. We're on the cusp of changing cancer. As you know, we made a commitment, cut cancer in half in 25 years, and extend life to Americans suffering from cancer by significant numbers. And it's happening. But they want to cut the funding. Cut the funding. They want to cut funding that guarantees the clean air and clean water. They don't want those inspectors out there. The new Republican meganomics would mean 82,000 children would lose access to Head Start for low-income students and affordable preschool. Not only are they not willing to support our joint effort among your delegation and me to make sure that we're in a situation where we provide for early education. You know, if you send a child to school, no matter what the background is, not to daycare, but to school, where they teach reading, writing, arithmetic at age 3, the cost is de minimis, and you increase by 56% the chance that that child, no matter what background they come from, will go through 12 years of school and on to community college if they choose, and be able to do that. 56%. Look, folks, they want to cut 226,000 teachers and staff. Could lose their jobs at Title I schools that serve the most vulnerable. And now they're turning their backs on the bipartisan budget deal. Speaker McCarthy made with me just a few months ago, after threatening to do something no one came very close to do it, shutting down and reneging on our national debt, which would have caused an international economic crisis. Well, they're back at it again, breaking their commitment, threatening more cuts and threatening to shut down government again this month. Now, what they do talk about is claiming all these cuts are going to reduce the deficit. When it comes to reducing deficit, let's compare the records a little bit. Under my predecessor, you remember the self-professed king of debt? Well, it turned out he was. He's actually the emperor of debt. He created more debt than any other president did in 1 year. No, I'm serious. For starters, when he passed that $2 trillion tax cut, skewed to the wealthy and big corporations, they didn't pay for a penny of it. The end result was that it has ballooned the national debt by nearly 40%. Over a 200-year accumulated debt, they ballooned it by 40%. Well, I've taken a different approach with the help of your delegation. And I'm not being solicitous when I say that you have the best delegation in the country. As my mother would instruct me to say, please excuse my back. I apologize. Sade, I just told her. Maryland or anywhere in the United States, and you give it the same prescription in Toronto, Canada, or London, England, or Paris, France, or Madrid, Spain, you're going to pay somewhere between 20 and 40% less in those other countries. Same exact drug, made by the same exact company. It's wrong. And guess what? We changed it, and we're not going back. I don't get it, man. Up till now, seniors have been paying up to $400 a month for their insulin. We've reduced that to $35, and at $35, the drug company is still making 350% profit. Because the guy who invented the insulin for diabetes didn't patent it because he wanted it available to everybody. To make it and to package it costs $13 to $14, and they're paying $35 now for it. $35. Democrats just got, and Republicans are trying to take that away. We did something else, too, you should be aware of. Just a few years ago, as was pointed out, 55 of the largest corporations, the Fortune 500, paid zero in income tax, and they made $40 billion. I said I was going to do everything I could to make sure they start paying their fair share. Well, we changed that. Now the biggest corporations have to pay a minimum tax of 15%, so they don't get away with paying nothing. As a matter of fact, they're supposed to be paying a minimum of 21%. 21%, that's what the tax law says. You know, big corporations are, by the way, I know a little bit about big corporations. I'm from Delaware. More corporations are incorporated in Delaware than every other state in the United States of America combined. And look, I want them to do well, but pay your taxes. But they're complaining. So MAGA Republicans are carrying their water. They want to go back to telling them, pay nothing again, and you have to pick up the tab instead. You pick up the tab. Not only are they refusing to take corporations, make them pay their fair share. Early this week was reported that MAGA Republicans are planning to give an additional, this is not, again, this is all public, an additional $1 trillion tax cut. $1 trillion tax cut for big corporations. We're doing very well, I might add. Apparently, they think corporations which make record profits in recent years pay too much in taxes. It's unbelievable. To hear mega Republicans in Congress tell it the only way to reduce the deficit is to cut Medicare, Social Security that you have paid for in your whole life. From the time you've had your first job, you had to pay into Social Security. Out of every paycheck. Give me a break. These guys are just plain wrong, and they proved it. On my watch, the deficit already has fallen by over $1 trillion. $1 trillion so far. I signed legislation to reduce the deficit by another $1 trillion over the next decade. And the budget I'm putting forward this year would cut the deficit by another $2.5 trillion on top of that. We're doing it by making the wealthy and big corporations begin to pay their fair share. I'm not talking about 70% taxes. I'm talking about 36% fringe taxes, 24% taxes. How many of you think the tax code is fair? Raise your hand. Even if you're making it. No, I'm serious. Even if you're making a lot of money. You know, we've gone in the pandemic from about 740 billionaires in America to 1,000. Well, guess what? These billionaires pay an average of, guess what? Less than 8% in federal taxes. Less than 8% on a yearly basis. They pay a lower tax rate than a firefighter, a teacher, a cop. How can that be right?